let's get rid of that. Welcome, everybody. Sorry for that delay. A little bit of a technical difficulties we were dealing with. Rob's on location.
New internet. What can I do?
There you go. Welcome to today's show. We had some, like I said, technical difficulties getting started. But as a lot of you may know, and if you don't know, there's some breaking national news. 2 National Guardsmen were shot in Washington, D.C. And there are conflicting reports whether they have survived this attack. We're getting reports from the West Virginia, from the West Virginia National Guard, that originally he put out a post that they had passed away. Then he put out a post that he was getting conflicting reports and he would give an update. The FBI, just before we came on the air, had a press conference, did not confirm the status or condition of the National Guardsmen, just said they were praying for their full recovery, which gives me an indication that they may have survived. But it's a horrific scene. This is a picture that was posted of U.S. Secret Service, Uniformed Secret Service, tending to the victim, to one of the victims. I'm going to, I'll throw up a news clip that I had pulled just a little earlier. I don't have the news conference because it literally broke just before we got on air. But I did watch it, and they are not saying the condition. But the information I got, and I have some information coming in from actually Washington, D.C. On what happened. We'll get into that in a minute. But I'm just going to throw up this video real quick.
But we see how they're ramping up attacks and assaults on ICE agents, federal officers, law enforcement, and now we have National Guardsmen. I have no doubt in my mind that this person will be brought into custody. There's extremely high-level cameras, video surveillance, and I guarantee you that all hands are on deck right now. My understanding is that Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, is looking into this. I guarantee you FBI will be involved, local police departments.
So that was the initial news report. And then I did find also, here's somebody's video footage just after the shooting. And you see the National Guard and the U.S. Secret Service uniformed police apprehending the suspect. So let's take a look at that real quick. So you see the 2 National Guardsmen down. You see them take the perpetrator into custody. Again, so this is a picture of the alleged perpetrator being loaded into an ambulance. Again, conflicting reports whether there was an exchange of gunfire. There was a 3rd National Guardsman that was there. The information that we got from Washington, D.C. was that the National Guardsman was standing outside the Metro train station, I guess on their high visibility post or whatever it might be. And that this individual took out a firearm, again, unknown what type of firearm, took a shooting stance, started approaching the National Guardsmen, shot the 2 National Guardsmen, and then as the 3rd National Guardsman attempted to engage, this individual began firing over the downed guardsman. So I don't know much more than that. That's actually from a source in Washington D.C. that has actually seen the video from the Metro station that's out there. So that's what we have right now. Rob, your thoughts, or I know we were working on trying to get everything, but
how is it now? Is my audio better?
No, your audio is fine right now, as long as you can hear me. And also, anybody in the chat, we engage with the chat because we're not going to be able to see, as we're doing the show, any breaking news. So if there's any more breaking news or any news or updates on their status, the status of the guardsmen, throw it in the chat for us, and we'll give it out to the audience. So we appreciate that. So go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just think that, there's a lot of fueling of hatred, right? Talking about it and how the National Guard shouldn't be there. I mean, this is rhetoric that we've heard from the beginning, and we hear it every time that they're deployed. And you know what? I don't know how you can really blame them. They're actually just doing their job, right? They're being deployed there, and they're being told to do whatever. They're omnipresent, stand in front of whatever federal building or stand wherever they're supposed to be. And then to just kind of ambush them is an attack on the military, attack on law enforcement in general. It's just really, it's sad to see that the hatred and anger that you feel for something, that you take it on an innocent person that's just standing there. So obviously my heart and prayers go out to the 2 National Guards. I hope that, like you said, that the news is that they are alive and not passed. I had heard one was shot in the head, but I'm just hoping that the best for all of them, and if they make a speedy recovery, because again, like I said, it's not their fault. They were just doing their job. So
yeah, and we've talked about it. We had a show on it when the National Guard was first deployed, and we gave our opinions on what we feel about that. And overall, Washington D.C. has seen a dramatic crime decrease since their deployment. And again, they are not law enforcement, so that they're a force multiplier. They're an omnipresence, and these guardsmen. We saw them. Listen, people talk about it, but not just post 9/11. Since then, the National Guard has been, when crime was up in our subway system, down in the subways
all the time. Yeah,
armed National Guard were there as an omnipresence, not conducting law enforcement, but just as an omnipresence. So they were there in Washington D.C. And this heinous act of an ambush, like the news article or the news report did say, this is just another attack on law enforcement. And now it's an attack on our, United States government troops that are out there to make the city, make this country safer. Whatever your political beliefs are, it should never, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter how anything, like you said, Rob, these guys were out there. They were doing what they were told to do. They were following their orders of their commander in chief. Agree with the commander in chief or not, agree with the Secretary of War, whatever you want. These were the orders that were given. The National Guardsmen were following their orders. They were out. They were standing guard, doing their sworn duty to, protect the Constitution and the people of the United States. And that's what they were doing. They were out there. And we don't know what nationality. We're not going to speculate. We don't know. Obviously, you couldn't even tell what type of clothing he was wearing because they cut his clothing down to check for wounds, I'm guessing. That's a normal course. Probably also to check for any other additional weapons or any kind of improvised explosive devices he may have had. Because this is a terrorist attack, you know, to do things like this is to cause and create terror in people's minds and fear in people's minds. So,
and I don't think it was that far from the White House. So to me, it has some political connection here. You know, somebody's trying to make a sick, psychotic point, in my opinion.
yeah, and that's I saw on the news they showed a map, and it looked like it was like 2.5 city blocks down. I'm not that familiar with Washington D.C. And so I don't know, but according to the map, this was very close, like you said. So it's obviously politically motivated.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, it's really, you know, I don't know what else to say. And again, I'm going to try and keep up with the chat, guys. I'm a little behind because we had those technical difficulties. And, you know, try to catch up a little bit. So if you do have any information, please, his son, Jack had nothing to do with it. he had nothing to do.
I don't know. Maybe he might have sent a virus or something. I don't know.
Unless he sent the virus. This is,
You know,
this
those ITB guys, they know what to do. You know, you could be miles away and all of a sudden you get affected. So my first suspicion is of course is Jack. So that's I agree, Hassan.
This is a self-produced show. I do the production on the show now. So you know, 92 Charlie saying great show this morning. Ralph Salento was on, retired Lieutenant Detective Commander. It was a great show, a very lively interview.
Long.
Definitely. Yeah. He went 3.5 hours, over 3.5 hours.
They beat us. They beat us.
I don't know about that. I had a pretty long interview, even though mine was pre-recorded before they did lives. But just I would definitely, you know, take the time, go back, take a listen to that. Very interesting story, very interesting career, especially in the beginning of his career. So take a look and go back at that. Also, I would just like to take this moment and this opportunity to memorialize someone that I had worked with, P.O. Willie Rivera from the 7-8 Precinct. He passed away on November 23rd of 2004 from injuries he sustained a while before that. He was an anti-crime in the 7-8 Precinct. Him and his partner were chasing a perpetrator on a roof. Willie fell from the fire escape, had serious leg injuries, had several surgeries, had a blood clot, had a grand mal seizure while he was going through his recovery, and he wound up passing away. So prayers to his family, to his daughter, and the rest of his family. And Willie was a great guy. I remember him well. Great sense of humor, big smile. So I hope Willie is resting in peace, and I just wanted to bring him up today.
Yeah, no, like I think Eric says, right? Prayers to the guardsmen and their families. An attack on those who protect us should shake everyone, regardless of politics. Absolutely. I mean, how can you not? That's 100%, right? We could say spot on, because that's what they're there for, right? They're there to protect us. And when something like this happens, it is an assault on all of us. So, I don't know if you looked into our text, but there might be, they might have pulled back because they didn't make proper notifications, and now maybe they didn't want the news to say what the news that they sent out that they had passed, but they still might be, unfortunately, they might have passed already. So
Yeah, well, that's what normally happens, right? With somebody, they don't usually give out the information.
yeah,
But you know, um, yeah, all we know is they're from the West Virginia National Guard. So every family right now is on pins and needles if they're not getting a phone call from their loved one because they're
oh yeah.
involved in the chaotic scene there. So
Where
yeah,
were they deployed from? They were Kentucky,
West
right? I
Virginia,
think
West Virginia,
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah.
You have to, I mean, you definitely prayers to that the family of the two National Guards, but think about everybody else that came from that deployment and their feeling and their families, right? Waiting for the news, sad. I hope everybody, normally what happens is everybody has, they can call and tell everybody that they're safe and stuff. Kevin O'Connor is saying that Cash Patel said they're in critical condition, but you know what? At this point, I don't really trust Cash Patel at all anymore. So
Well, they all said. I watched the press conference, and they said that they're praying for their full recovery, which is a strange statement if they're aware that they haven't made it. Instead of just we're not going to comment on their condition at this time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
Just hope for the best.
I'm assuming that we'll find out before the show is over. We should know what's going on with that. Yeah. So how you doing, Kevin? Good to see you in the chat. And then Burn 1808 is saying POTUS just tweeted that both guardsmen are critical wounded. Yeah, he put that out much earlier. And that he was the shooter was severely wounded, but he didn't look severely wounded getting put into that ambulance. To be honest with you. But all right, so we were going back and forth whether we were going to have a show tonight. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, but we decided we're gonna come on. We're gonna do a show. We're gonna try and keep the show brief, but we're 20 minutes in and we haven't even gotten to our first topic yet. So we'll see how we go. We didn't get a chance to discuss the topics in depth before the show today because of the technical difficulties. So we're gonna kind of wing it, and then we'll get going. But anything else you want to touch on before we move on?
No, I think like you said, everybody Thanksgiving, the people that are working the balloon inflation right now, if you're listening, maybe hopefully you get out of there early, and then tomorrow morning's an early day, but hopefully everybody gets that early blow. I don't know if it's really an early blow, like you're literally there at 5 a.m. and then you get out at 1, but it seems like it. So hopefully if you're working a detail, you get home and enjoy your family. But yeah, I think I want to thank Jack for messing up my my audio tonight, and we'll see I guess we'll wing this as best we can, right? The show.
Yeah, well, let's try and get into it then. A lot going on in the city. Besides this national news, there's a lot going on in the city. A lot of chaos going on in the city. A lot of things that are hitting the news that are NYPD related. One of them was over the weekend. There was a protest at a synagogue in Manhattan, and there was a scheduled protest, and it kind of we'll get into it in a little more detail, but it was not the setup and the preparation was absolutely not handled up to par, up to NYPD standards, and that falls directly I hate, I hate to say it, but that falls directly on the precinct commander, and we'll get into that in a bit. But it got to the point where there was a protest and a counter protest, and they were both put out right directly in front of the synagogue. And we're going to show you some video in a little bit. People couldn't get in, people couldn't get out of the synagogue. The street was blocked, and there's a lot of reasons why that was really bad. But it actually, because of what happened, Commissioner Tisch came out and put out an apology, and she went and she spoke to the congregation, and she said that the week's protests are legally allowed outside houses of worship, no matter how vile the topic was, but said the NYPD failed to keep the front entrance clear and ensure people could easily enter and leave shul. Shul, for those who aren't aware, is the temple, is the synagogue where they conduct their services. That is where we fell short, and for that I apologize to this congregation, the 44-year-old top cop said during a 10-minute speech which drew a standing ovation. Our plan did not include a frozen zone at the entrance. As a result, the space right outside your steps was chaotic. And from overseas, the mayor, Eric Adams, who got back just under the wire before Jumaane Williams took control, who's a retired NYPD captain, learned that a protest was planned. He texted his handpicked commissioner and other NYPD honchos before it started and told them to make sure it didn't get out of hand. And then he goes on to blame lies at the feet of those spreading those hateful messages. And while the mayor and police commissioner were clear about the needs to ensure the entrance to the synagogue was clear of protesters beforehand, the plan executed by the commander on the ground did not meet expectations. That was from Fabian Levy, who is the mayor's spokesperson. So, I'm sorry, guys, we had these issues, so I'm a little behind. So if you take a picture of what it looked like in front, this is what it looked like. That's the entrance. So on the left, you have counter protesters. On the right, you have protesters. You have the barriers are set up to keep them within, away from each other. But it was just total chaos. And, here's a short video just to show the chaos. And then we'll get into it. So just what are your thoughts on that right there?
Well, it was my understanding that it wasn't even like it was a soul to soul type of organization there that helps people move from America to Israel, and where they can work in the IDF and serve their country. I just see that obviously there's mass confusion. There should have been means of egress for people that went into the synagogue, and there should also be means of egress for people on the sidewalk. When you allow the crowds to get right up against there, against the building, it just makes for a pretty chaotic scene. Like you said right there, it's chaos, right? Chaos at the time at the synagogue. But at a certain point, if it was up to the precinct CO who was in charge, if this fell on his lap, it needed to be better policed, obviously, right? And they just allowed these people to take over the particular both sides, and then they block people. So now you're actually, you're blocking pedestrian traffic. I mean, are we allowed to scream and yell and spew hatred? Yeah, there's no crime against, saying things. But when you start talking, get back physical, and you start blocking people, then it raises to it a whole different level. So I just think that there's no way in previous incidences where you should allow that to happen at all. Doesn't matter what group it is, right? Doesn't matter if it's BLM or some other group. If they're protesting, they have a right to protest, but it's supposed to be peaceful, and it's supposed to be controlled, and you're not supposed to be stopping, holding up people. I saw one video, I think it was on X, where they wouldn't let somebody pass at all. They weren't allowing they even get into the synagogue. So I mean, this sets the tone up for a lot of hatred and a lot of anger, and it was definitely policed incorrectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the precinct commander is Deputy Inspector Noreen Lazarus. I don't know her. I'm not familiar with her at all. And so what is a little bit odd, right? And like you said, we're going to talk about, we're talking about what went wrong here, right? And we're going to get into what plan really we believe should have been placed into effect to properly police an event like that. I mean, you've been, as the XO of SOD, you were in charge of the strategic response group, who was this disorder control specialist. So protests after protests, as a precinct commander myself, I used to have to set up details when we knew, and this was a permanent event. This was not a spontaneous event. This was a permanent event. They were aware of it ahead of time. They had time to prepare, and they should have prepared. And, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, right? So you have to be able to know your area, know the right thing to do, know if you're going to have these counter protests that you're going to need a spot for them too, right?
You know what I question? I question if the CO, and I don't know her either personally. I don't know anything about her, but did she come out from behind the desk and go to the synagogue before, do an assessment, right? You have to do that.
Let me show you this, Rob. Let me just show you this.
All right.
And just chronicles. Yes, we did have an episode on the protest agreement. We spoke about that in length, and we had a special guest that came on and helped us with that. That was very familiar with it. And retired Deputy Inspector Tony Raganella. But Rob, I'm going to give you an overview. Right, this is East 67th Street. Right, this is East 67th Street, 3rd Avenue. Park East Synagogue is right there where the red mark is. Right next door is Fire Engine 339 Ladder 16. Right next door to Fire Engine 39 Ladder 316 is the 19th Precinct. The 19th Precinct is 2 doors down from the synagogue. 2 doors down. There's no way, you do a site survey. Normally you send your community affairs out, whatever. But obviously, I'm sure that the precinct commander has a relationship with the Park East Synagogue clergy.
You hope.
Right? Well, they're 2 doors down. You would definitely hope. And it's a prominent synagogue in Manhattan. 2 doors down. So to me, it's even more disturbing the way things were set up, because now when you have the protesters and the counter protesters, and you have the counter protesters on the west side, which is basically between the synagogue and the fire station and the police station, you're possibly blocking egress from the fire department that may have to get out and answer a fire run. So total breakdown in planning. I question the community affairs, who should be used to putting together these details. And it just blows my mind how, first of all, it looked like they didn't even have control of them when we showed that first video, right? They didn't have control of the crowd, and then they had to push them back behind the pen. They looked like they were somehow got out from behind the barrier, and they were circling in front of the synagogue, chanting whatever they were chanting. So then they get them penned up. So when they're penned up, this is what it looks like. Again, let's see that again. Boom. They're literally feet away from each other on both sides of the entrance. There's no it just makes no sense to have it set up that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. Like if you go down a little bit in the chat, Phil the heater guy is telling me that the CO was not behind the desk. She was in her office doing nothing while sergeants ran the precincts. So, I mean, that might be a little inside information there, but I'm saying that I don't know if she went out there, if she looked. I don't, you could have a rapport with everybody there, but I mean, was she working? Was she actually there at the time? I mean, this is a pretty big event, right? If you're going to have something that's going on in a synagogue down the block from your house, whether or not a fire department is there or not, I mean, there's a lot of factors in this. And if she didn't take it serious because she thought it was just going to be an uneventful thing, well, that's her fault then. But I mean, like I said, I don't know for sure. Area 2628, she talks about something. She says, should New York City allow events that instruct people on terrorist activity, breaking international law? This is unacceptable. I'll say, first of all, I don't think we enforce international law. So that's the first thing I would say. And I don't believe, what was the international law? Were you telling people that they can't go to Israel? I mean, I don't understand that.
Well, they assist people to immigrate over, and what the protesters were protesting was basically that what the international law they're saying they're breaking is that they are helping people to go into settlements in the West Bank. So again, like you said, we're not enforcing we're not enforcing international law. Just like, if Netanyahu comes to New York City, the NYPD is not going to lock him up because of the international warrant, that whole thing. So,
and just so you know, this soul to soul is, they don't have any radical positions from what I know from this organization with the research that I did. And they're trying to send, mostly Jewish people back to the homeland of the Jews. That's all. I mean, I don't know if the international law, if you can't tell them that, you can't go back to your own country. So if there was a bunch of Italians, you can't say, oh, Italians, you should go back to Italy and become citizens in Italy. I don't know if where's that in the international law, and I don't know, they can do that. That's freedom of speech, right? You could tell people to do it. I don't know how you're breaking the law by telling people to do something. Could they be breaking the law if they do it? Yeah, that's true. I could tell anybody I want, hey, you know what? Go shoot somebody, go shoot somebody. But until somebody goes and does that, then my liability changes then. But freedom of speech, that's what America's built on. So I mean,
Right.
you should be able to say whatever you want. And then people do. When people demonstrate, when certain groups demonstrate, they say whatever they want. They don't care, right? They do all what they do, the violence or whatever, and everything's okay. But then all of a sudden, because you have Jewish people doing this, it becomes breaking international laws. I have to push back on Ari. I totally disagree with that.
And I agree. And I'm going to get into another comment that she has up here. But first, I'm going to put up what John wrote on X. John McCary is that this is America. You're allowed to say horrible things, and we talked about that. We've talked about that. There's a free speech platform, right? And we're First Amendment advocates, and we question this whole hate speech and try to have laws against hate speech. There's a difference between hate speech, where you can say something hateful, you can say something disgusting, and that may not make you a nice person, but it's not illegal. You have the God-given right to say that in this country, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think. When you threaten or call for harm to someone else, now you're talking different. Now you're talking threats. So they can stand out there and they can do what they want. And to Aria's next point, I think it is free speech, but the synagogue hosting this kind of event should be protested. And conversely, you have that right to protest. We're not saying at all.
Yeah, but protest peacefully.
Right. And they were protesting peacefully. This was the police's fault. I'm sorry. This was the NYPD's fault. The protest was fine. The protest didn't get out of hand. There was no arrests. There was no injuries. There's ugly speech being thrown back and forth at each other. But that's what protests and counter protests are. It's someone having the ability to exercise their First Amendment right.
Yeah, no, I'm not specifically saying this protest, but I'm saying the protest, you have a right to protest, and this was done in this event. But what I'm saying is anywhere is protest peacefully. That's the second caveat to that statement. Okay, so when that crosses the line, now you're absolutely 100% right. The police did not do a good job. You have to blame the top. I'm not saying the cops on the scene. If they weren't given direction, they weren't given understanding, or if they were given wrong direction, then it's who's the fault? It's the supervisor that oversaw the incident. So whoever signed that and allowed them to the demonstration, right? Whoever allowed them to do that, then that to me that's their fault.
Right. Apparently, Commissioner Tisch is speaking now, and Lily's asking, what does she mean by no nexus to New York City? What she's basically saying is that there's no connection. Nexus is a connection. So the incident that happened in Washington, D.C., they're not seeing in the intelligence community any connection to anything in New York City, that we have any credible threats to New York City that we have to worry about at this time. But yeah, again.
Well, just with that, Jerron, because it's the same bullshit rhetoric that they say every time. All right. All they say is, oh, there's no nexus and we're monitoring and we're on high alert. Some of those things, I don't know what the hell high alert is. I did 35 years in the police department. I think you're kind of on high alert all the time, right? You're always on your guard. So I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means? Do you know what did you do if they said high alert? I don't know. Maybe put out station house security. That was it.
Yeah,
that was it. So it's the same rhetoric to get in front of the computer and tell everybody, hey, remain calm or whatever. But it's BS. It's complete BS.
No, I agree. So Do you want to get into what the politicians' responses were to this, or do you want to talk about what you think what the precinct commander should have done a little bit better first?
Whatever you want. I'm open.
Which
You
way
know,
you want to go
jump,
with it?
jump
Well,
around.
yeah, well, let's talk about it, right? Because then, as we said in the beginning, the mayor was on his 8-day jaunt, right? If you're out of the country for 9 days or out of the city for 9 days, then the public
It's like
advocate.
it's it's his last like victory tour. So not even a victory tour. It's his last hurrah.
Well, he stopped by. He had a cup of coffee, and now he's leaving the state again to go get get another award from the same people he got an award for in
Of course.
Uzbekistan or wherever he was.
Who's paying for that?
Right. Well, So Randy Mastro was the first deputy mayor and was in charge, physically, even though, the mayor is always in contact today with communications.
Right.
So he comes out and they put acting mayor, but there's no such thing. Randy Mastro rips the NYPD for botched response to vile protest. Reading the article, he really didn't rip the NYPD. He was more saying we weren't prepared. We didn't do it. That was already admitted by the police commissioner, and we're going to dig a little deeper into that. But he goes on to say how vile the protesters were and that there's no place for that here in New York City, which unfortunately is not really the truth. Protests are legal. The hate screaming anti-Israel demonstrators should never have been allowed by the entrance to harass Jews going to synagogue. The deputy mayor said of Wednesday's menacing rally outside the historic Park East Synagogue on the Upper East Side. So he said they were literally at the door of the synagogue shouting things like globalize the Intifada and urging resistance to take another settler out and saying vile things like we don't want no two-state solution. We want the whole thing. It's not acceptable in our city. We have to protect the houses of worship and so on. But like we both just said, and it's been said in the chat, that is your First Amendment right. As vile as it is, you have the right to be vile. And that's just, that's just, listen, he could say that. And again, I think everybody's going to say that the NYPD is to blame for the chaos. Like we titled this episode, right? Chaos at the synagogue. Whether you agree or disagree with whatever was going on inside, you have the right. Okay. You have the right to protest. So that's fine. Right. And Phil said nobody ever told anybody to go back to Italy.
No, that's right. He said they like the food here too much. That's true.
But there's no doubt that this chaos rests at the feet of the NYPD. And we don't like to be uber critical. We look at things, we talk about Monday morning quarterbacking, and Monday morning quarterbacking is a good thing because we don't want to take swipes at anybody. We don't want to make it personal, but we want to talk about what happened, what went wrong, what could have gone better, and how to make things better. So, it's just, again, Randy Mastro is talking about, hate speech. And listen, it is what it is. You're allowed to say whatever you want. You're allowed to have these conversations, to have these protests, to have these counter protests so people can yell back and forth at each other. And that's fine. And, again, the NYPD was supposed to be apolitical, right? We're not supposed to take sides. We're supposed to give everybody the same freedoms and the same protections to go out and to execute their First Amendment right to protest. So that's what they did. But they didn't do it well.
I don't remember anywhere when I was reading the penal law and the criminal procedure law where it said speech is hate and you can't say that. I remember reckless endangerment. If you're inside a theater and you yell fire and it causes a mass hysteria and everybody runs out, well, then that's reckless endangerment. But you know what? You're allowed to say things, and that is the freedom of America, and you're allowed to do things peacefully too. So, I mean, if one of the videos on X was in viral news in NYC, and he had somebody that was like clearly being blocked and not allowed to walk. And now you take the hate speech and the rhetoric and you add it to disorderly conduct, or you add it to menacing because you're starting to surround this person, then it becomes a hate crime. So I didn't see any videos where the pro-Palestinians were there was arguments back and forth, but I didn't see where they were stopped from doing anything. I see a lot of videos where some of the Jewish people going into the synagogue were stopped and told they couldn't walk down the street and stuff. That to me is intimidation. That's menacing. That's wrong, because now you're adding a crime into it. That's an element of a hate crime. But when you want to talk and yell and whatever, well, that's fine. That's your right, right? I mean, we've seen that marching down the streets all the time. And I was a big proponent when that they shouldn't even have these people in the middle of the streets. They gave up streets. I can't tell you how many times right. It was a sin that they would just give up the whole street. People were blocked, and they started getting smart. They would go counterflow. So the RMPs and the for SRG trying to follow them, would be hard. We'd have to go on the street adjacent to it and follow them up. So they became different ways. They would also splinter a lot of times. They would splinter in different ways. One group goes this way, and that pushes the police department resources. So that they know the game too, and they know how much that they can get away with. So
they know that settlement agreement better than we do.
Yep.
No doubt about that. So Frank G is saying, pushing back on Aria a little bit, that they were in front of the synagogue during worship services. That's not good. What don't you understand? I don't think that Aria is not saying that they didn't have the right to protest, and that the counter protesters didn't have a right to protest back at them. Everybody has that right to voice their opinion. And again, we're not putting it on the protesters. We're putting this chaos at the feet of the NYPD. And that's what we're talking about, as two executives with decades of service and decades in the executive rank, and have handled hundreds of protests and pop-up protests, planned protests, other types of events. It comes with planning, and it was not planned well. So let's look at what.
Just with Aria, though, she's saying things about that about international law and all that, and you know what? That's not a concern of us, right? I mean, whatever they're doing, and they're allowed to say that. Okay, they're not telling people where you have to go or whatever. And I don't if they're telling them to go to West Bank and it's Palestinian land or whatever. You could tell anybody anything you want. That's freedom of speech. All right. If somebody does it and they violate international law, well, that's not up to the NYPD to care about it anyway at that point. So I don't know what she's talking about there, but like you said, people have the right to say things and talk about it. So I mean, it's when it's coupled with violence or intimidation or menacing and harassment, and that's where it becomes problematic.
Right. And Eric's here. Eric Dim, most complained cop. Now, I'm Jewish, and I've heard anti-Semitism my whole life. I don't care what people say. That's free speech. I'll always fight for that. Hate speech isn't real. Violence is. So again, like we're saying, we're not here debating the merits of the actual protest. We don't care. People can go out and protest whatever they want to protest. We have a problem with the settlement agreement and the fact that, like Rob said, the city has basically given up the streets, that they've tied the hands of the offices that are directly engaged where they need certain approvals to take action, when that was never the case, when people are allowed under the settlement agreement to break certain laws and no actions will be taken. We have a problem with that. We don't have a problem with the content of the protest. Personally, we may, but speaking as executives, speaking as, people that have dealt with this from the law enforcement spectrum, we don't have a problem with it because we're here to police both sides. We're here to keep everyone safe. And that's the whole job, is to keep everybody safe. So Mamdani was slow to jump in, and then finally he makes comments. And again, like Arya is saying, is that, the Nefesh B'Nefesh event promotes in violation of international law. And we know from his prior statements about Netanyahu being arrested that he would like to enforce international law here on the soil of the United States, which is something that we do not do. So he brings this up.
I love to see who's taking that collar. Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine. Hey, you got to lock up, Netanyahu. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So here's a quick news hit on Mamdani's response.
Mamdani met with President Trump in Washington, D.C. today. Here at home, there's growing fallout over Mamdani's response to a protest outside a Manhattan synagogue that leaders condemned as anti-Semitic.
This is a look at that protest in question. News 4's Chris Glorioso is live on the Upper East Side outside that synagogue with more of the criticism and this response from the incoming mayor. Chris.
Well, let me set the scene. Earlier this week, a group of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian protesters staged a demonstration out here in front of the Park East Synagogue. The synagogue was hosting a group that helps Americans immigrate to Israel. Almost immediately, Jewish leaders, along with Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams, condemned the protest. But after that, some others criticized the mayor-elect for not speaking forcefully enough about some of what was said here. Wednesday night, anti-Israel protesters shouting death, death to the IDF steps away from the Park East Synagogue. The house of worship was hosting Nefesh B'Nefesh, a group whose website says it supports Americans immigrating to Israel, along with assisting and supporting the brave young men and women who choose to serve in the IDF. Some Jewish leaders condemned the demonstration so close to a house of worship. Governor Hochul called it shameful and a blatant attack on the Jewish community. Mayor Adams called the protesters sick and warped agitators.
What they're saying is wrong, what they're saying is dangerous, and what they're saying is hostile towards a group of people.
But one of the protest organizers told News 4 the demonstration included Palestinian and Jewish activists who believe Nefesh B'Nefesh supports settlements on disputed West Bank land that much of the international community outside of Israel and the U.S. considers illegal.
It was aimed at clear violations of international law by an organization that encourages people from North America to settle into the occupied West Bank.
A spokesperson for Mayor-elect Mamdani said he has discouraged some of the language used at the protest, and he believes every New Yorker should be free to enter a house of worship without intimidation. But Mamdani's statement also said sacred spaces should not be used to promote activities in violation of international law, suggesting he agrees with the protesters that the synagogue was hosting a group aligned with illegal settlements.
I think his definition of violating international law is Jews having a place to live safely and finally have a country for themselves.
News 4 reached out to Nefesh B'Nefesh but did not immediately hear back. The head of the Anti-Defamation League said the protest included blatant anti-Semitism and said Mamdani should be able to condemn it without hesitation or qualifications.
I'm grateful that we have, a mayor-elect who will uphold international law, hopefully, regardless of the pressures to ignore it.
News 4 did reach out to reps for the Park East Synagogue. We did not immediately hear back, but earlier this week, a cantor here at the synagogue told the New York Post he believed much of what was said at this protest was disturbing. Reporting live on the Upper East Side, Chris Glorioso, News 4 New York.
See, if you look what Bronx World says at 1803 hours, the United States of America is not part of the International Criminal Court, the ICC. So, there's talk about, doing all these things about, locking people up like Benjamin Netanyahu, enforcing this because they're saying people should go to Israel and work in the IDF. Come on, they gotta, think about this, what they're saying. Okay, do a little research, find out the facts before you start spewing all this stuff that you think it's wrong. But just to say, Matt O'Brien talks about the CO accountability. Now, I would say I hope that the CO is held accountable for this, because this is clearly something went wrong. Whether it was poor planning, poor deployment, there is clearly something very, very wrong at this event, and it needs to be corrected. And there should be, and like I said, there should be accountability. And Matt, I totally agree 100% with you. There has to be accountability. If nothing happens, nothing gets corrected.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, the conversation is still going back and forth. And again, we're not, we're not, Aria is saying, she just wants to push back that it wasn't a normal prayer service. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it was in front of a synagogue to me. It doesn't matter if it was down the block just on the street corner. The protest wasn't handled properly. That's what we're discussing here, not the content of the protest. Once again, the speech is disgusting. The speech is vile on both sides of the protest and the counter protest. The things that they're saying are vile, but that is their right to say vile things. Like someone else said in the chat, you have the right to say it, doesn't mean that you should say it. But you have that right. You have that freedom to say it, right?
And just so you know, Eric gave me a spot on. So
I saw it.
It's 1-0 right now. I'm just saying.
I saw it.
All right.
I knew it. I saw the pen in your hand. You're keeping tally.
I want to keep you informed. I don't want to leave you out.
Listen, and I don't want to say anything, but Phil the Heater guy gave you a spot on too.
So
you missed that. We'll give you a half a spot on for him.
That's it. Well, since Phil the Heater guy likes Italian food, I'm gonna take him to a nice Italian restaurant. Then we'll have to go out.
Well, things are bad because you got a spot on and Jack got a spot on from Eric. I haven't gotten a spot on.
Yeah, I know. All right.
But let's get into what we think should have been done by Deputy Inspector Lazarus. Again, we don't know Deputy Inspector Lazarus whatsoever. You're laughing at a comment. What do you got?
Well, Eric just evened up the score here. He just gave you a spot on.
All right. I didn't see that yet.
All right. I don't know. Is there a way for me to dispute the spot on?
I don't know, but 92 Charlie's trying to put me in the minor violation log. What am I in the minor violations log for?
Was maybe because you came in late last week or 2 weeks ago? Even though you submitted your 28 and nobody saw?
Right. Well, listen, I pulled the 28 because I have to submit one for lost time instead of a full tour now.
Right.
For those who don't understand what's going on, last week I was away in Texas for a wedding, and I was able to check into my hotel and jump into the chat towards the end of the podcast where Eric had sat in for me, and 92 Charlie was saying that I should get take a hit and a craft for being late, when actually I had submitted for my day off, and so I was putting some time in, while I was in Texas. So I pulled a 28, And speaking of Texas, I know John threw this out there. There we go. in Texas for a wedding. My cousin's cowboy hat on. So since John already threw it up there, I figured I'd throw it in there for you.
Well, like I commented on the group chat, I said that's Ronnie Cash right there.
Coming from Chief No Cash.
Cash.
All right, so
Yep.
let's take a look. Let's take a look at what we think we should have done. Right. So this is an overhead view, and this is what you used to do. You know, if you're not, especially if you're not familiar with the area. But I mean, being that you're 2 doors down, there's no reason that you shouldn't be familiar with this area. So for those of you who are unaware, everybody has the right to protest, but you can't protest just anywhere. There are reasons that we have to give you an area, right? That gives you what's called sight and sound, right? You have to be able to see what you're protesting, and the people or the issue that you're protesting needs to be able to hear that you're protesting. So that doesn't mean that you stand in front of the location. As it's been discussed by everybody, it was improper to have the protesters directly in front of the synagogue, not because it's a house of worship, not because of whatever was going on inside, but because you don't do that. You don't block access and egress from a location. You have to find a safe place that people are given the right to protest and can protest peacefully and safely. So you're protecting not only the participants of the protest, but the general public. You're there for both sides. Like I said, the police were apolitical. So here, I'll zoom in a little closer. I put these 2 arrows. If I was the precinct commander and I was permitting this demonstration, or even if it was a pop-up demonstration, you move them, you move the people. The arrow to the left or bottom of the screen there is the southwest side, is where I would put across the street from the Park East Synagogue, is where I would put the protesters. Give them a clear line of sight to the front of the synagogue where they want to protest, that they can clearly be heard. It's a small street. You can clearly be heard. So you have sight and sound. Where those trees are lined just off on the north side of East 67th Street, where those trees are, is where I would put the counter protesters. Now, because it's an aerial view, I'm not hiding the protesters behind some bushes. They're trees. Okay, so you could stand there, you could put up the barriers, and they are free to counter protest, and they have sight and sound of the protest. So they can stand on that side of the street and yell at the protesters instead of standing on the left side of the door, yelling at the protesters on the right side of the door. And the reason, personally, that I would put the counter protesters on the side of the synagogue is only because they are more in tune with or in line with the actual synagogue. So I just think it's a safer place to put them, where there'll be less confrontation with anybody coming and going from the synagogue. Obviously, I would have closed down East 67th Street from 3rd Avenue. Okay, I would have made notifications, which could have done with the firehouse. And what the firemen would have probably done, and what I would have recommended, is for the firehouse to take out their engine and their ladder and have it out of the firehouse, just in case this protest grew, so that they weren't blocked and they did have the ability to respond to any fires. So
Yeah, the fire department does that all the time. They relocate their engines and stuff.
Right.
That's not, they go to another adjoining firehouse or whatever, and they hang out there. Yeah, that would be I'll say spot on move by you there to make the fire department so that they can get out, So I think you're killing me in the spot ons now. I'm down and dirty. So
Modern Samurais, happy Thanksgiving, gents. Cash OT for both of you guys. No more of that take it in time crap. That's you, Rob, taking it in time.
Yeah, you get to 34.59 and you got to take the rest in time.
So, I mean, what do you think of my setup? and where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that you shut the street down, so that added to stuff. If I was going to keep the street open, I would think about keeping the people all on one side, on the opposite side, both the protesters, both sides on that side, and then this way it was free access for people to walk up and down the sidewalks, and they didn't have to walk in the middle of the street. But it still gave sight and sound, like you mentioned, to the protesters. And right across the street, like you said, that's a very small block. I used to be I was the duty captain in Manhattan North, so I knew it. I knew that street all the time. Would visit that precinct, so it's not a very big block. And yeah, shutting it down gives more access, and it'll just allow pedestrian traffic. So that would, other than that, that would be the only thing I would do, is maybe keep that on both sides, because also I wouldn't want to have one side, whether it was the Palestinian protesters or the Jewish protesters, to say that, hey, it's unfair that they're next to the synagogue and we're not. So I may that was the only thing, but everything else I would have to say was spot on.
And Phil gave me a spot on too. There you go.
I know.
I don't know who Anthony. I don't know if Anthony's. He's throwing a right on out there. I'm not sure what that's going at.
That's all right. Anthony knows.
But so I mean that's where I think that she failed, and I think she failed miserably. And again, you can blame the community affairs, because they're the ones that really, your community affairs are the people that you kind of count on to set up these details, to do the 49, and then you sign off on the 49. But you got to read what you're signing off on. You got to read, especially on a block of the precinct. There's no more familiar area than the block of your home, right? So it clearly rests at her feet. That's just, there's no if, no ands, no buts. If this was my command, it would be my fault. My community affairs drops the ball, it's on me, right? And
the other thing, Ron, as a precinct CO, I think you would have been there, right? Knowing the violence that could occur between the two groups, knowing the previous protests that have happened, I think that's something that you would have been there, and then you can also make game day decisions. I'm not saying she wasn't there, because I don't know, but in all the videos I saw, I see community affairs and I see police officers. I don't remember seeing that many bosses there to make adjustments, because you can make adjustments on the game day, right? The Giants, even though they terribly suck this year, do make changes, throughout the game, and that's what you got to do. So, and I love the Giants, by the way. So,
yeah, and that's I did see one white shirt from SRG.
Yeah, great.
I don't know what rank, because he had his back to the camera.
And remember the agreement, right? That what's their authority, right? There has to be somebody higher, right? Like a chief, doesn't it?
I'm sorry?
The authority for SRG even to move in and do anything, right? It can't be just, we know that it's not the SRG CO's there. We know he's not there. He's burning his time. So I don't know who the acting CO is, but whatever that white shirt is.
They actually they just appointed somebody today.
Who got it?
Give me 1 second. Talk for a minute. I'll find it for you.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, I just think that if SRG was there, I hope it didn't fall on them, because it is supposed to be the community affairs officers that are the front line there, and they're the ones that are supposed to make sure that everything goes appropriately, that they have the softer touch and they're able to, move people around. But it just seems that things got very chaotic. Now, I don't even know if SRG was called later on. I don't know if they were part of the initial plan. So it might just have been, hey, come and stand by or whatever, maybe a 1 and 8 or whatever. So yeah. I don't know.
Charlie Hammer got it. Inspector Charlie Hammer.
I don't know him at all.
Inspector Charlie Hammer was in SRG. He was designated commanding officer. It was in today's orders. Somebody sent it to me earlier. So yeah, so that's where I think they went wrong, and that's what my plan would have been. Just looking from the outside in, which is a lot of times what you do. You got to find a safe location. You got to keep people separated, and you got to police it to keep everybody, again, keep out of the content, and just police in context of where you are.
And just with Phil, the heater guy, because him and I are going out to an Italian restaurant. He already said he knows a few, but he said FDNY shouldn't have to be relocated. But I think that the issue there is it's a one-way street. I know that the fire department usually comes off of, I forget which, I think it's 3rd Avenue there. They make the left. But it's just, if you relocate them, it just makes it easier for them. I remember during the, the George Floyd riots that there was fires that the fire department can get through, because if there's a massive amount of people, they don't move for the fire department either. So that was the only reason I thought the relocation, like you had mentioned, might have been a good idea. So, but if they had means of egress and they were and the demonstrators were in the proper pens where they were supposed to be, then you could leave the street open.
Yeah, I absolutely wouldn't have left the street open, and I would have made sure that the FDMY was aware, so that they can either relocate or even if they just park their rigs outside, down the block, whatever the case may be, so that they're able to respond from the house.
Yeah, I just impedes response. I think relocation was the best offer, but
yeah. But now Matt O'Brien is asking, what would the accountability look like against the CO? I don't know. Unfortunately, it's a high-profile incident. Normally, that doesn't bode well for you. I don't know where this deputy inspector stands with the upper echelon of the NYPD, which does come into play. Does she? I forget how long she's been there. She hasn't been there that long. Does she lose her command? Does she, get a soft landing? Does she just get brought down and yelled at and told, well, you got to do better? You got to do better. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. It didn't turn violent, and there were no arrests. It was a massive inconvenience that was televised and got out there. So that's to her benefit.
Well, if Tish does anything, right, this is the normal course of action. What the police commissioner will do. The police commissioner will say, all right, I'm gonna, I didn't like your response. I don't think you did a good job, but I'm gonna transfer you. You're gonna lose your command, and they get transferred. And then you know what? 6 months later, they get miraculously promoted. So it's almost like, hey, kid, take the hit for the team, and we'll take care of you in 6 months. And that's a little bit of behind the scenes white shirt BS right there. That's what happens, and it's happened a lot of times.
Like
TC says, F up, move up, right? That's the way it is.
Hassan says that Layson is shaky. I've been called a lot of things in my career. Shaky's not usually one of them. I've never been afraid to make a decision, stand by my decisions, and do what I think is the right thing to do. Do I always make the right decision? Nobody does. I always make the decisions. If I make a mistake, it's a mistake of the of the heart, not the mind. It's not an intentional mistake.
Hey, Hassan put me in the box earlier. I don't know what I did, but he put me in the box. So I'd rather be called shaky than put in the box.
Yeah, Michael M. I agree with you. My former precinct commander in the 7-0 after Abner Louima, he wasn't even in the country, and he lost his command.
Listen,
so that is true.
I knew somebody that was in Ireland and was told to fly back on the next flight from Ireland to come back because some incident happened in his command. So that happens.
Yeah. So Eric loves you, Hassan. He's giving you love now. He may not have given you love today on the show, but he's giving it now. All right. I think we've, listen, we've talked about it. And again, a lot of people want to discuss the content of the protest. That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing the logistics, and that, yeah, it's ugly, but speech can sometimes be ugly, and speech, you're allowed to be ugly in your speech.
The only thing I would have to say to that is the precinct CO, there's going to be, rhetoric back and forth, each group, but you have to be prepared for violence or, some sort of criminal activity. And that has to be part of your plan. So if one side all of a sudden starts doing something that causes a violation, a misdemeanor, or a felony, there has to be ready to have action taken, and who's going to take the arrest, who's going to do the enforcement, etc. How are you going to get that person out of that area? So I mean, all of those things that has to be part of your pre-planning as well. So I'm not saying it wasn't, but that has to be. And then all the cops know. We've said it how many times, Ron, on this podcast, that when you tell the cops what they need to do and why they're doing it, they will do it 100%. A great bunch of men and women, they'll do what you ask them to do, but you have to give them the understanding and the direction. Without that, then it's a free for all, and nobody knows what to do. I wouldn't know what to do. If the chief of department told me, hey, I want you to do this, this, and that. Okay. If they didn't, well, I'm going to go there and do what I think is right. And it might not be what they wanted. So it's always good to give that direction and understanding and explain things, why you need to do it and the plan of action. So I'm sorry. One last thing. That's why ESU has TAC meetings, right? That you have a TAC meeting before you're going to do a warrant. You go to the precinct, you talk to everybody, you explain things that's going to happen, who's going to be the hospital car, who's going to do this, all planning, all steps. Without that, then you have no direction.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Terry Murnane is telling you 100%, Chief. We say it all the time. The only time that we say that you just give direction, just do this, is at at an emergency scene where you don't have time to explain. But when you're just giving out general orders and general details and general instruction, when people know why they're doing it and what the goal of what they're being told to do is, they're going to do it. They're going to be a lot more susceptible to it. They're going to be understanding to it. So, I agree with you. So listen, we're an hour and 18 minutes in, a little over 400 viewers on all the platforms. Let's hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Don't forget to follow us on X at Exec Perspective. And you can also DM us at Exec Perspective on X. It's open to all. Or if you have any questions or comments that you want to talk to us about offline, whether maybe you're an active member or whatever the case may be, or you have questions for our segment, Ask the Executive, you can send that to theexecutiveperspective@gmail.com. We do respond. We will respond to you if we don't think it's appropriate to bring up on air. Let us know in that email if you feel that it's okay to use your name. Otherwise, we will not use your name, and we will keep your identity confidential. With that being said, I think we've covered it. Things hit the news. These things happen every day. People make mistakes. I don't know. She's pretty new in the precinct. I don't know if she handled details when she was in her other commands. Somebody put up her other commands before, the 2-4 and something else. The 2-4, the 2-8. I know she was a lieutenant in OMAP. She had the money in OMAP. I just think that it needs to be done better, and hopefully she's learned from this. You know,
Yeah.
not just for, and again, it's not just to pander to the Jewish community because it was a synagogue. That could have been anywhere. Just when it comes to houses of worship, they become a little bit more newsworthy. So
Yeah, this was a management problem. It doesn't, like we said, it doesn't matter what the demonstration was, but this was a management problem. And maybe, hopefully, like you said, she learned or whatever, and hopefully other people saw, through her mistake, and they learned too, because that's the way I always learn too. When other guys made mistakes, you learn from them too. So all right, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I didn't think about that, but now I see what happened, and you take it in a better way. So yeah.
all right. You want to do one more topic?
Sure, one more is good. Yep. Turkey's not in the oven yet, so.
Turkey's not in the oven. I got to run out soon, but we had a few things lined up today. We could talk about the self-enforcement. We could talk about the city council trying to slip it in, or I think since we're talking about chaos, maybe that incident in Queens.
Oh yeah, yep, sure.
Car meetup. So if you haven't seen social media and you haven't been watching things, there was a car meetup where guys go and they have their cars and they do drifting, where they go around in circles and do donuts and spin outs and everything else, and they take over the streets. I've dealt with this personally in the 110 precinct. We used to have them in the Flushing Meadows Corner Park all the time. And they're very difficult to police. When they're pop-ups, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible because of the coordinated effort it takes to box these participants, we'll call them, in. They're very reckless in their driving. They're very reckless in their efforts to elude capture. But I was fortunate in that I had a good intel team and a good conditions team that would monitor their social media, that would make up fake profiles, like certain people do to interact with Eric and John, make up fake monikers on these car club social media, groups, and we'd find out where they were coming and where they were going. And we also had information from the intelligence division who would monitor it also. So when I was in the CO, we would literally have the old task force, which is now the SRG. We would have my conditions unit do a tour change to work at night. We would have, patrol. We'd have a lot of resources, and we'd also have somebody from legal who would be there. Sometimes somebody from the DA's office, and they would be videotaping it. And so the biggest thing with this is, if you can get them, is actually taking their cars through forfeiture, because you can only arrest them for reckless endangerment or reckless driving, which are both misdemeanors. You can't charge them with any felonies unless their car is, has fake plates or whatever the case may be. So it's very difficult to police. But what I do have to say is that there have been times where there were pop-ups, either in Flushing Meadows Corona Park or outside of Flushing Meadow Corona Park or around City Field, where these things would pop up and we weren't aware of them. And when a couple of cars responded over there with lights and sirens, they scattered like cockroaches with the lights on, and they took off. Nowadays, we've seen it. We've seen videos on social media of these cars drifting around an RMP that pulls into the middle of them. It's disgusting because there is no accountability anymore. There's such disdain for the police, and they kind of know that our hands are tied. But like I said, when I was a CO back in 2012, 2011, 2013, they would leave if you showed up. So now they're even more emboldened. So let's take a look at the video.
Hold on. There's two other things we used to do also in the Special Operations Division. One, ESU has large, what they're called 18-wheeler lowboys that you could actually cut 2 streets off and trap everybody in their vehicles inside that particular block and then do enforcement that way so there's no vehicle pursuits. The other thing you might want to talk about is having aviation up in the air, because aviation can follow cars, and then that alleviates that high-speed pursuit. You know, you wait till they stop or whatever, and then you go and you get their car that way. So there are other things you can do as well, too. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100%. It was a little difficult over there sometimes because of LaGuardia Airport was so close.
yeah, no, there's
So you have the
limited
flight restrictions.
space there, yeah.
But yeah, so let's take a look at this video. For those who haven't seen it, it's been all over, and this was posted by Vicky Palladino.
One Queens neighborhood, people are angry and anxious after an illegal street takeover. It happened over the weekend. Dozens of cars were involved, spinning out tires and doing donuts. A car was even set on fire, and 2 people were attacked. News 4's Paisy Chang has more on what happened here.
Police towing the charred remains of a car, a stark reminder of the destruction left behind. Councilwoman Vicky Palladino described the scene.
Saturday night, they declared war on Malva. Those outsiders who came here declared war on this neighborhood.
She shared these videos on her social media showing more than 50 cars gathering near 141st Street and Boulevard. Resident Larry Rush tried to stop them.
You know, I moved the car into the middle to slow it down, and it did. You know, they kind of started leaving. Matter of fact, they started leaving from this street, and then they lit the thing on fire, and then it just went chaotic again.
The burning car was only part of the chaos. Down the block, a man who asked to be identified as Blake confronted several people standing in his driveway. He went outside to ask them to leave.
So when you say get off my property and all you see is people videotaping and saying this is what we do.
The confrontation recorded by the visitors. Blake was jumped, kicked, and punched in front of his wife. She tried to push people off of him.
Fractured nose, fractured shoulder, fractured bone in my face, a few fractured ribs, and this fracture in my neck with the cartilage, and I'm lucky to be standing here.
Blake is back home recovering, but he wants to share his story in the hopes that this never happens again.
Nobody deserves this, no matter where you live.
At this point, the NYPD says they have not yet made any arrests, but residents are hoping to ask the city to perhaps install some checkpoints going into this neighborhood, particularly when these street racing meetups do happen, and also maybe install some speed bumps so that they might be able to prevent street racing. In Malba, Queens, Paisy Chang, News 4, New York.
Yeah, the speed bumps really make a difference, and that's what actually we did in the parking lots in Flushing Meadow Cornell Park. We worked with the Parks Department, and we put ballards in so that they can't have that open space to go around. What are you thinking about with this? You're doing them all in on me.
Oh, there you go. All right, it's Thanksgiving.
Oh, Mo's gonna get you for this one.
Mo. Hey, the Hunter brings up a really good point. The grappler. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It shoots out a net from the front of the RMP, the radio motor patrol car or police car, and entangles the rear wheels, and you can actually control the stop on it. So you don't have to do a pit maneuver, all that other stuff. So that's another great idea. You know, you talk when John Shell, you know, the one that now is on Newsmax complaining about how the police department is so messed up after he was just the chief of department, was all said about pursuits and then it's not going to happen anymore. But you got to give them equipment. You get equipment that's going to help them to do those things. You know, there's also other things that you can shoot on the car, like a GPS tracker. Right. So there's a lot of things out there that people that are accessible to the police department. All they got to do is, you know, get them and help the cops do their job. instead of telling them chase everybody. And we saw the chaos that happens with that. Like TC says, Chase has all the answers now. Yeah, I mean, Shell has all the answers now. So
yeah. Well, Eric brings up a point. That's a lot of misdemeanors, and they spoke about this because John had tweeted about crime classifications from what this is. And there's felony assault, because if you watch the video, that homeowner got hit with some type of pipe or stick. So right there, it's a felony assault. You have gang assault. Everybody has been talking about gang assault. Gang assault is usually determined after the fact because you need a serious physical injury. And as messed up as the guy was, he had a broken facial bone, broken shoulder, and broken ribs. It's all internal. Until you get the x-rays back and you know that that's a serious physical injury, if he's just got bumps and bruises from being kicked and punched, it's not going to be a gang assault, because for gang assault, you need 3 or more participants and a serious physical injury. So once the x-rays come back and you have any fracture, could be a pinky, then you have a serious physical injury, right? So you have the gang assault. You have the felony criminal mischief on the vehicle for the fire. Because, people talk about charging with arson and everything else. There's a weird quirk with the NYPD, right? The only people that write a 61 for arson is the fire marshal. The NYPD, we don't do that. But you still charge them with the felony criminal mischief, which is a Class C felony, right? The reckless endangerment, you're not going to charge a felony on the reckless endangerment because there has to be a grave risk of death. Very harsh term, right? Grave risk of death for it to be a felony reckless endangerment. But you still have reckless endangerment and reckless driving, which are misdemeanors. But there's definitely felonies, without a doubt. You have the felony for the car. You have the felony for the assault on him. You have at least misdemeanor assaults on the wife, who was struck also when she was trying to protect her husband. And I believe the owner of that vehicle was also struck and assaulted. So you have misdemeanors there. So what Vicky Palladino looked into when John tweeted that out, they actually only charged misdemeanors. And according to her tweet, she had that corrected. And they're now charging felonies, and she's going to follow through with the DA to make sure when and if these participants are captured that they're charged properly. And they have, I don't have the picture, but they have a picture of 2 of the assailants that's out on social media now.
Yeah, well, crime's down, right? So yeah, good way to keep it down is you just write misdemeanors, and then they got called on the carpet. So how many other ones that John McCarry and Eric Dim didn't call out and say, hey, they should be felonies, went by the wayside and are still there? Maybe the reason they took it because their numbers are low right now, and they probably won't be able to beat them next year. So to me, it's just a giant game. I don't believe it, and I also don't believe that the DAs are even going to charge the crimes that they're supposed to. Do you remember there was 2 attorneys during the riots? They set an RMP on fire with a Molotov cocktail, and what happened to them? Nothing, right? It was like they got dropped down to misdemeanors or whatever, ridiculous stuff. But when it happens, like somebody said in the chat earlier, when it continues like this, it's been going on for years in Queens. When it continues, eventually somebody's going to get hurt, and seriously hurt or killed, and this needs to be stopped now. So,
and then Joe Cortesis,
that's who said it. Yeah,
great to see you in the chat, Joe. You talking about you last night on the 10-4 Tavern, and actually this morning on John and Eric's show. But this has been going on for years in Queens. If the NYPD doesn't take control, a community member will put oil on the street again. And that has happened in the past, and he's absolutely right, because you see what's going on, where the public is now seeing that there is no consequences for people that are committing crimes, and they're starting to take things into their own hands. As you saw this homeowner come out of his house with a baseball bat. It's a miracle they didn't, try to say he was menacing them. and go after
It's
him,
not over
right?
yet.
But, you saw that guy that attacked the women because they were white women. When he came out of court, he was attacked by people on the street, like vigilantism. We don't want to start seeing that, but we need the police to do their job properly in order to get this job done. So, I know Joe my whole career. Great man. Ralph Salento was talking about him today. They're in business together, doing great work post NYPD. So good to see you in the chat, Joe. And I've said it before. I'd like to get you on the show one day to go over your career and memorialize your career and talk about what you're doing nowadays. So let me know if you're interested in that. Hit me up. But people talk about what was going on with them, right? So the 109, huge command. They actually last year or a year and a half ago, they put out a satellite command because it's so big, right? It covers a large geographic area, and they were busy on Saturday night, the department said. At the time of the incident in question, other units from the 109 were handling multiple priority jobs, including arrest for an individual who was a DWI. Somebody was being transported to the hospital. There was another assault going on, and there was a vehicle collision with injuries. So there was word out there that there were only 2 cars running. I don't think there were 2 cars running at the beginning of the tour. At the time of this incident, there very well may have been only that car that was out on the assault and car that was on the vehicle collision, because you got the guy, one car out with a DWI and one guy going to the hospital with something. So there was a delayed response. The job initially didn't come over as a priority. Once it came over as a priority, they're saying now, originally it was a 45-minute response. Now, when they come out with the exact timestamps, it's a little less than that. It's about 20 minutes, which is still way too much. They said they got the first call for drag racing around 12:37 a.m. But again, this could be, the drag racing call may have been where they kicked off the priority. I don't know if they're playing games with the times here, which is quite possible, to try and make it seem like less than the 45-minute initial response that they talked about. But they were doing a bunch of other things. It wasn't until 12:50 that the call was upgraded to a higher priority. And then they say it was 6 minutes after it got upgraded. So I don't know. They say it was 6 minutes. I know the 109, listen, I worked for over a decade in Queens North. The 109 is huge. What do you think about the response?
I mean, 2 cars, at a point you have to call the borough, right? You would hope the borough would be able to send you additional cars if that's it. If the borough can't send you cars, that's a good reason why you want the strategic response group. They wanted to span that completely, but there's a possibility you can have the strategic response group come into your command, and start handling calls and stuff. I know they're not going to want to hear that, but at least respond to backup and patrol, so that you'd be able to respond if something bad happens. But yeah, to me that 20 minutes. I think the average response time is like 16 minutes now and stuff. I think that's BS. Maybe there was a call to 311 first, because it's what they're drag racing. It's almost a non-crime type of response. So did it get pushed back on the wayside? Did it get lowered in the queue before the dispatcher read it out? All of those things could have definitely happened. So I think that, there should have been more cars and more people. I mean, we talk about personnel issues all along. We always talk about it. So now here we're again. I mean, this is a classic example that there's not enough cars to patrol a particular command. Listen, I think it all went downhill when they started going into the they lowered the amount of sectors in a car in the precinct. Then they had the response cars. They made up all this BS, and now you end up with 1 or 2 cars driving around. I don't know if that's how it started. If that's how the tour started with 1 or 2, that's ridiculous. If it started with more, I mean, there was times when I made a collar, or my partner made a collar, and then another radio car made a collar, and then you would have to jump in the radio car with that other, the other partner, so that you made up another sector. So I mean, there's things that could be done. I just hope they're being managed properly, but just doesn't seem to me that that's it. It's not good.
Yeah, and Steven's asking, no excuses. Don't other units from adjoining precincts respond if needed, if everybody's under deployed? Yeah, they will. But like Amazing Ant says right after that, the 111's in the same issue, no manpower. So it's it's tough, and and that's a tough hour. So Joe, I just shot a text to your old work number. I don't know if it's the same number. Otherwise, I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn. I saw you tell me to give you a call, but I just texted your old work number. I don't think it's the same number because it's coming up green.
Yeah, Modern Samurai. You see what he wrote about? I remember in the 2-3 that 100% that was problematic, right? There was they had all problems with the Rough Riders racing through the streets. You lose control when there's a gang like that. It's the same thing, when they're racing and everything else. It's just a terrible thing, it's bad. And 92 Charlie says, Chief, the precincts don't have the manpower, and they hear the same, that they do only turn out 2 cars. I mean, that's dangerous. That I would go into that, and then I would say, well, where are the unions saying, hey, that's not fair. What's our minimum manning, right? You remember it was minimum manning, and you had all right, I got to put out 4 sectors. Okay, where are we at then? Are we just throwing minimum manning out of the equation now? Because that's, to me, is dangerous.
Yeah. Hey, Hassan, just message me through our X account, and I'll hook up with you. All right, and we'll get Joe on. That'll be a good interview for us, Rob.
Yep. Yeah, I know Joe a long time too. He's a good man.
Yep. All right. You want anything else on this? I mean, listen, the response time is an issue throughout the whole job because of the exodus, like we keep talking about. The crime classifications, I can't see how that was anything but a felony assault before you make it a gang assault. It's absolutely a gang assault once he comes back with those broken bones. But usually that's an upgrade in with a DD5 if it's not signed off on yet. But at minimum, it was a felony assault to begin with. And then, the vehicle, how is that not a felony? I mean, again, we're not going to charge arson. We're not going to do a 61 for arson. Only the fire marshal does a 61 for arson, but you still have the criminal mischief to the vehicle in the value over $1,500. So, it's I don't know. What do you think? Anything else?
No, I think like Mike says, right? It says you never went below minimum manning. Crime would go in uniform before you fell below that number. The SNU teams, you had a lot of resources, and like Eric Dim says, we're 34,000 strong. Yeah, okay. We put out 2 sectors in a lot of these commands. So yeah, Mike, I agree 100% with you that the patrol was always the first priority, right? Everything else came thereafter because you want to make sure your cops are safe on the street. So craziness, but yeah, no, 34,000 strong. We're doing well.
Yeah. All right. I got to jump off in a couple. You do a quick Ask an Executive.
Yeah, I didn't see much in the chat. Any in questions? I see one's right up there, but yeah, we could just maybe 1 or 2, and then we can let these ladies and gentlemen.
And again, forgive us for those who it's our first week. This happened once before. It has everything to do with YouTube, nothing to do with us. Where your handle is coming up and not your username. So that's a YouTube thing. So at RSJH2KL, thank you for the 5. Why are so many units being assigned out of their own precincts? Mismanagement. It's mismanagement of personnel. It's always happened, but now it's more noticeable because the lack of manpower because of the mass exodus. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people leaving. I mean, yeah, I think there needs to be a whole new revamping of the whole job. I mean, we've spoken this a few times. We need to, let's get back to basics. Let's get cops back on patrol. And yeah, do we need to send them the details? Do we need to fill all these other things? No. Your first obligation is to the citizens of New York City, and that's to make sure you respond there appropriately and do what you're supposed to do. So you don't need to 70 people in DCPI to make sure that the news gets out. I'd rather have a cop respond to my house and tell me the news.
They had the whole social media unit that was monitoring certain podcasts. So
Yeah.
they had to have a full-time, monitoring unit, and some of them are still, doing it. But I see Hassan asked a question. Actually, he had this question up before we started the show. So on a serious note, what do you guys think will happen come 1/1/26? What to expect or predictions?
I think everything stays status quo for a little while, especially since Tish. I think you wait until there's a tiff between those two, and then there could be changes. But I think everything's going to stay the same right now. I like we've spoken on the last show, right? Or that was Eric and I, and you jumped in at the end, surviving Zoran. We don't feel that Zoran's going to be an immediate problem, right? It's going to be the PC and the administration, the super chiefs. How is this all going to filter down to the cops on patrol? So I'm predicting that it's going to be status quo. I think Eric had agreed with me that it's going to be status quo. Guys aren't going to be running out of the door. I mean, there's going to be retirements, and you know what? Everybody says when you know, right? That's when you go.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
I agree with you, and I was actually speaking to an active chief last night. Made a phone call for the parade tomorrow, but saying, hey, what are your plans after the first of the year? And he was like, I'm not going anywhere. He goes, I don't think anything's going to change really. He goes, because he's keeping her, and she seems to be happy with the executives that are in place right now. We may not agree that everybody is still in the right seat, in the right place. That's left over from the last administration, because I don't think that she had full power to make all the changes that she wants. So I think that we're going to see more movement. I think if he gives her that right. But January 2nd is when he's going to start to be vocal, and he's going to start to try and put out the messages to get his mission accomplished. And we know that it's a socialist mission. So things, I think, are definitely going to change. I don't know how this Department of Community Safety is going to be. I don't know what's going on with that. I think that's a dangerous road to travel down. We've discussed this in the past. I think it's a dangerous road to go down, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, some people are saying that, it's going to change the streets. The streets are bad right now. And you know what? The streets may get bad, but I don't necessarily know. Like Fox says, gentlemen, you are disconnected. The street is getting wilder by the minute since Zoran got elected, especially newcomers. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that the street's not going to change. I just think that the police department isn't going to change immediately. I think, listen, John and Eric have gone through it with Marlon, and you look at, is this de Blasio 2.0? Is this Adams 2.0? A lot of the things that Adams and de Blasio put in effect are also in Zoran's thing. That's this whole response to EDPs, and that's all been tried and failed before. So we'll see how it goes. I agree, but I don't think guys are going to run out the door. So
92 Charlie, what do you think about Mamdani having Alex Vitale on his safety advisory board? Vitale's anti-policing. He's very vocal, very anti-policing. Videos are popping up left and right about him talking about, the police or the violence. We have to remove the violence. We have to remove the police. So I think that when you're looking at his safety advisory boards, you're looking that he's going to follow through on a lot of his rhetoric that he had during his campaign. There's a lot of things he's not going to be able to do because he just can't legally. He doesn't have the authority to do it. But there are things that he's going to be able to do, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not as optimistic as you and Eric that things aren't going to change. So what do you think about with this Alex Vitale? Have you seen the videos? Have you been able to see the videos online?
No, I haven't seen that, but I did notice that, Ronnie Harrison is on that committee. I did notice that Susan Herman is on that committee. Susan Herman was a big advocate for, changing EDPs and stuff. I had been in multiple meetings with her. To me, she was very nice woman. And she's very smart woman. So I hope that she understands. She would always say that when ESU handled the job, everything was done right because we were able to slow things down. So I think it's just it could be a training issue, but I don't necessarily again believe that having social workers respond. I mean, we spoke about this, so I don't want to get into much, but I just think, the people that are on that committee, I hope they go in the right direction, but there are some radicals on there that are going to look to change the police department, and it's not going to be the right thing. It's going to be a complete failure, in my opinion.
And Chronicles is bringing up two of the things that he talked about. One of the things was pod mapping. And pod mapping is basically he wants to take away the police response and have, community people identified to respond to conflicts and things like that. Just pretty much like Zohan Mandami talked about with these, social workers, but pod mapping, you're just using plain Jane everyday, as they call it themselves, do-it-yourself policing, where they're going to have these people identified to respond, to handle crises within their own community. I'm scared for it. And then, you want to hit on that real quick? I got to jump.
No, I think we're good. You handling? You maybe just read out the Sleepy Joe asked us to read out the super chat.
We'll do that in 1 second. But Hassan had nothing. What about SRG and CSC being disbanded? Absolutely think that they're going to be rebranded. I don't know that they're going to be disbanded. You can't get away from SRG. You cannot have a New York City Police Department in New York City without some sort of formal disorder control unit. I'm sorry. You just can't.
I'll say promises made, promises kept. That's my opinion on that.
Well, I hope not, because that's going to be, we think it's bad now.
Well, it's a stupid decision because they don't understand what SRG does. All right. It's just not crowd control. All right. I've mentioned it numerous times. Like you've said, mobilizations. Okay. When there's a missing, okay. When there's a special category missing, under 10, over 65, when that happens, you need additional resources. Okay. And when there's an active shooter, they're a force multiplier for an emergency service unit. So if he doesn't understand that and he disbands them, then he's barking up the wrong tree, and he's going to hurt people. It's going to hurt the citizens of the city.
92 Charlie, what has Tish done for the rank and file? I don't understand why everybody thinks she's an asset to the department. We've had discussions on this in the past too, 92 Charlie. I think that she's very heavy-handed. I think that her discipline is over the top. I think that she's an administrator, and I think that's problematic. We've talked about in the past that we both believe that someone who leads a law enforcement agency needs to have come up through the rank and file of law enforcement. It doesn't even necessarily have to be the NYPD. If they came up through other agencies, they understand the culture of the NYPD, or they'll understand the culture of policing, rather. And when it comes to discipline, that is big on morale. And when you're talking about being heavy-handed with morale because people make mistakes, because people do make mistakes, I'm not sitting here defending everybody that did something wrong, that got charged in specifications, that got command disciplines, that even got terminated. Some people are rightfully terminated. This job is just not for them, and they make mistakes. Some mistakes you can't turn back from. Other mistakes, you need to get a little slap to learn to not do so. But her not coming through the culture of the uniform ranks, I believe, is detrimental, and it shows, especially when it comes to discipline. So I'm not sitting there saying she's that. I do think that she is the best. Well, I think Keyshawn Sewell could have been the best police commissioner, but she wasn't given a chance, and she exited before she had a chance to make any kind of impact. But I do think that she knows the NYPD. She knows the politics of the NYPD, and that she's been the most effective police commissioner under Eric Adams. And I think that's because of his prior failures that he had to give her more leeway and more power to do what she needs to do. Because I've always said this, that the police commissioner needs to be autonomous and needs to be able to run the police department.
I think once she leaves, the rank and file are going to tell you the truth. It's often that there's a police commissioner there and nobody wants to speak about anything that's gone on. Nobody says anything. You didn't hear, excuse me, you know, anything bad about Madry or anything else until all of a sudden the scandal breaks, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, all these other things. So I think once she leaves, eventually, then you'll hear things. And I don't give her a lot of credibility and accomplishments myself either. She's a good speaker. You know, she could stand in front of the mic. She controls the stage, but I don't see, you know, her being the, you know, yes, definitely Adam's best choice, absolutely. But I don't see the rank and file really falling in behind her.
Yeah. All right. I think I didn't see if there's many more. I think this might be our last question. Anthony is asking, does the NYPD deploy patrol cops, meaning precincts that have more cops working than their minimum required will send their extra cops to work the tour in another precinct that's working short? Yes, it's called flying out. And that's one of the things at the borough. At the beginning of your tour, if you are minimum manning or below minimum manning, if I'm supposed to run 4 cars or 5 cars and I'm only running 3, I have to call the borough. What the borough is going to do is wait for everybody else to call in their resources. And if somebody's supposed to run 5 cars and they're running 7, they'll take a car or 2 and they'll fly them out and they'll work in those other precincts.
Quick story. I was in the 4-1 and they flew me and my partner to the 4-9. We went in there and they're like, all right, you take this sector. And we were driving around, and the 4-9 is pretty big. I don't know if how it's comparable to like the 109 or one of those other precincts, but it's a pretty big precinct. And my partner and I were beating the sector cars in the 4-9 to the jobs, and we were thinking to ourselves, how are we beating these guys? And we're beating them to their own jobs. But yeah, that happens all the time. So, and sometimes it's fun to be in a different command, different way of life, you know.
Yeah. And another one, Hassan's got a bunch of good questions today. Do you think the CCIB will have a final say? Again, it's not up to the mayor. I think that the city council, unfortunately, I think he's going to support it. And I think that even though now he's backing down from that a little bit, he's gotten a lot of pushback from Tish and other people. But again, I fear for the future. And that's one of the things I fear for. Anything else? You see anybody else ahead of me that I didn't get to yet?
No, just Hassan Mo. It's not mushroom coffee; it's regular coffee. So just let them know. But all good here. If you want to grab the super chats now.
Give me 1 second. Yeah, let me just bring up the shows. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, I'm a little behind today. I got a couple things going on. And then, all right, so we're going to go through the super chats. We read them out during the show, but we'll bring them up once again today. Mana Samurai, again, $20. Happy Thanksgiving, gents. Cash OT for both of you guys. No more to take it in time crap. Sleepy Joe, $10. Happy Thanksgiving to the Finest Unfiltered family. Thanks for the hours of spot-on content. And John's mushroom coffee and Marlon's muted microphone moments, which you gave us one tonight.
I have to.
And then RSJH2KL, $5. Why are so many units being assigned out of their own precincts? So we already talked about that and answered that.
Yep.
Listen, we appreciate the donations to the podcast. We appreciate everybody for listening and engaging with us. I want to wish, before we just close out the show, and I throw it to Rob for final say before I give the rest of the lineup for the week or next week. I want to wish everybody a blessed Thanksgiving. I appreciate everybody here on the chat and the support that we've gotten here at the Executive Perspective. So that's one of the things that I am thankful for. I'm thankful for your partnerships, Rob. I appreciate it, taking this journey with me. And so I want to wish everybody a happy, a healthy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your family. If I can, I want to just, because if you see Hassan Mo, if you look in that corner, his avatar or whatever you want to call it is the poster in loving memory of Derek, for Derek Dim. So special thoughts and prayers to the Dim family for their first Thanksgiving without their beloved son, Derek. So our thoughts, our prayers are always with you, Eric, and your family. So especially around the holidays, I know it's a lot more difficult. So just, and thank you, Hassan, for always keeping Derek's memory with your avatar and also with your super chats on his show. Everything always ends with, you have your jokes and everything else, but it always ends with in loving memory of Derek. So we appreciate that. I just wanted to bring that back up.
Yeah, no, everything you said was spot on. Appreciate everybody in the chat, all our friends, families, everybody that we engage, everybody that joins us on Wednesday night at 17:05 hours. Thank you. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. To the Finest Unfiltered family, John, Eric, Sal, Marlon, Jack, thank you for everything you do, keeping the voice and the words out there so everybody in NYPD can be protected and safe and, watch us and learn, hopefully. Ron, thank you for everything you do. Truthfully, you not only, you do the production, you prepare, you do a lot of things. And it makes it really easy for me to be able to come on and speak with you and stuff. So thank you for everything you do. So I just want to wish everybody, a happy Thanksgiving, a special Thanksgiving to Eric, like you said, in Derek's memory. Listen, everybody, we appreciate everything you do, and just enjoy your family. Have a great Thanksgiving, and that's the most important part, because the NYPD is a big family. They're a big blue family, and everybody on the chat, you're part of our family too. So we want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
And then we got one more, last one from Hassan Mo. Oh man, $9.99. Good evening, Chief and Inspector. Love you guys. Airtime on me. My favorite show all time. Mo, Eric, Marlon, Sal, and Jack are a bunch of Jomos. That's enough, Inspector. Always in loving memory of Derek. Like I said, he always finishes it off.
Absolutely.
In loving memory of Derek. So I want to thank you again for that, Mo. We appreciate you. And also just a special shout out. Like I said, I was in Texas last week for a family wedding, and we celebrated. It was the first time that my siblings and my mom were together in forever. So it was special to have that day together with my family that I haven't been able to get everybody together because we're located throughout the country. So we appreciate that. I appreciate my family too. So with it being Thanksgiving tomorrow, there's going to be no Sal Greco show. So Sal's taking the day off. And then the Finest Unfiltered is not going to have their roundtable on Friday. They're taking the day off for the holiday too. So the Finest Unfiltered will be back Monday morning, 08:05, with Eric and John and Marlon. And they'll be talking about whatever's recent. And I'm sure something's going to come up over the weekend that'll give them plenty of content. And then on Tuesday, Sal will be back on Tuesday at 1:05 p.m., 13:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Sal Greco show. And then Tuesday night at 17:05, you have Tom Joyce and Pete Faselli, another great show last night. Go back and watch the recorded episode on the 10-4 Tavern. They're going to have a special guest host next week because Pete's going on a cruise after he has his family Thanksgiving. He's going on a family cruise. So enjoy, Pete. Safe travels. Enjoy the cruise. Haven't been on one in quite a while, but I love them myself. So they're going to have a special guest host. Retired Deputy Chief Mike Marino, one of our favorites, is going to sit in for Pete Fuselli with Tom Joyce. It's going to be a SATCOM Brooklyn North reunion. Brooklyn North in the house. So they're going to have Tom Joyce was, he's a cold case squad and the 7-9 detective squad commander, but their guest is going to be retired Lieutenant John Cornicello. He's retired from Brooklyn North Detective Squad and the Brooklyn North Homicide. So that is going to be a show you don't want to miss, with the Brooklyn North reunion. And it's going to be a lively show. Mike Marino's on. So we all know, if you don't know Chief Mike Marino, he did an interview with John and Eric a few weeks back. Go back and watch that. You'll get to know him. If you were on the job while he was on the job, you knew him or knew of him. A good man, a good leader. And then we will be back next Wednesday at 17:05 with the executive perspective. So until then, be safe, everybody. Thank you very much.